This is a fan production for Parahuman Audio's community content. Worm, Ward, and the Parahumans series are all owned by J.C. McCrae. Find them at parahumans.net and parahumans.wordpress.com. Today's episode is dedicated to the memory of Stealth Rock. Nora, are we live? La da 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 la da da la da 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 la da da da. Well, are we live or aren't we? Oh, right, all right. Hello, dear listeners, and those of you tuning in now just for the first time. This is Vermont Stretch Radio, broadcast to your little corner of Megacity Gimel live and intermittently from the Vermont Stretch, a series of settlements dotting their way across the Vermont of Earth Gimel. I am your host, Theodore Guy, a lovable scamp who seems to get away with just about anything. Outside the booth, because this thing only seats one, is VSR's intern Nora James, an out-and-about cape who decided to stick around here even after I finally got around to telling her how I met her mother, how I sculpted her mother, and how, barring any miracles, her mother is probably still lying where I left her, possibly underneath a layer of ash and more likely underneath a thin coating of snow. She's taken it all surprisingly well, all things considered. Listeners, the world is on its elbows and knees. It's forgotten the goals and it worships a lovely and radiant woman by the name of Goddess. In today's news, we'll be covering more rumors, hearsay, bland and uninteresting shenanigery by the keeps of Earth Gimel and its associated settlements, of course, and most importantly, sightings of our most beautiful and radiant goddess. Well, my goddess. Some people in this station think that while she is powerful and a beautiful cape worthy of adulation, she is not worthy of deification, which sounds perfectly silly to me. Everyone is allowed to go around worshipping endbringers and dead golden monsters, but we aren't allowed to talk about those dead golden monsters on the radio in too much detail. But a woman with impeccable fashion sense and perfect hair is apparently off limits. I mean, really. Anyway, though, Goddess may, just may, have been taking in a few swimming trips recently, and shopping trips, and recruitment trips as well, actually. She's been visiting the prisons, apparently, trying to round up a few capes to help her with a glorious crusade to restore order to the Earth Supreme, or Earth Shin, to anyone interested in trying to pay Shin a visit, or willing to disrespect her wishes for the name of her world. Anyway, the replacement for the Warden's leadership, or as we here at VSR like to refer to them, the not the Wardens, have been getting a little bit antsy about all of this, which is stupid, isn't it, listeners? Because if the Wardens are allowed to declare themselves an authority and recruit whatever villains they like, then why can't our goddess? If the Wardens are allowed to pardon members of the Slaughterhouse Nine for crimes like murder, modern art, and mass murder, then why can't our goddess? Anyway, more news on this subject when our goddess finally leads the Forsaken from their place of suffering into a bright paradise that she has set aside for all us capes. For now, though, still more news on our goddess. Sightings of her swimming have unfortunately not yielded any depictions of our goddess in swimwear, which would likely have been blue and would surely have complemented her figure perfectly. That's all we really had to offer there. Today's been a bit of a slow day for news. Apologies. So let's move on instead to tabloid news. Here is a collection of headlines from even less reliable news stories than me. Ms. Militia still looking good, with no G in the looking, and a description of the all-American hero. All-American in that she expresses her freedom to blindly obey without making her own choices. Women in Blue gathers army, which, well, that headline just refuses adamantly to use Goddess's name at any point in the article, and therefore loses any respect I might have had for an already tawdry rag. You aren't allowed to not use someone's cape name. Really, you can't expect us to be respectful of the names of people like Chevalier instead of just calling them big dumb swordy guy, durr, if you're not going to respect somebody's right to call themselves goddess. Now, what else do we have here? Toxic mutant saves humans from other toxic mutants, proclaims one headline, and it comes along, of course, with a depiction of a mop-wielding mutant that is clearly not an actual photograph. It's just from a certain abhorrent series from Earth Aleph, and assumes today's readership has forgotten about certain cult films just because the world ended. Our final headline, of course, Panacea under watch for insanity, which reminds our public that the renowned healer is on the list of birdcage capes released by the Protectorate on Gold Morning, and declined as, well, we can't actually find any records of their arrest or any records of their psychiatric evaluation. Although the headline itself is a little alarmist in my humble opinion, and more than a little dismissive of those who might not be wholly sane. Moving on from there, rumours are of course abounding. Well, moving on from tabloid news onto further tabloid news and rumour mongering, rumours currently abound of a broadcast scheduled for later today that promises to show you the truth of the behaviours of some of the capes that we are calling heroes today. I mean, not to complain, but we've always been complaining about our heroes, like that woman who calls herself the chooser of the slain and sounds suspiciously Welsh. Anyway, this whole who are we calling our heroes thing isn't as much of a problem as who we're calling our villains, considering of course that we set loose the entire birdcage and that many of those villains have gone on to continue to be villains, like the Marquis, not the Marquis de Sade, and not Marquis, although I have heard there is a potential connection between Marquis, the villain from Brockton Bay, and Marquis, the more recent bone-wielding supervillain. Now, complaining about the heroes the Wardens were happy to have running around is stupid, because we have villains that the heroes let loose that are running around, and honestly, I don't care if the heroes are people that had been a little bit murderous in the past, so long as we don't have murderers that were a little murderous in the past that are still being murderous right now. And additionally, it's a little concerning that the Wardens continue to release members of the Slaughterhouse 9. I mean, arresting one damsel of distress again for murder was bad enough, but 2 damsels of distresses seems a little scary even to me. Anyway, we are going to be hoping to have a little bit of a listen-in later on and to see what happens. Then we will presumably broadcast to you the exact same news, listeners, with a few of the colourful additions to the narrative that we here at VSR are so fond of. We'll be sure to open up the locks on the canals just as soon as the floodgates have already been opened. We here at VSR respect the right to privacy of all capes, even if they are a bunch of loons that will be the first with their backs against the walls when the revolution comes, followed by being the first with their backs against the sky, followed by being the first to scour ordinary humanity from the face of the earth. Remember, humans of Earth Gimel and its associated parallel worlds, remember, humans, that you are insignificant in numbers, significant as individuals, and significant again en masse in the eyes of all those that scrutinize you. It's sort of a bizarre metric where individual human lives are considered sacred. The lives of, say, a dozen or so humans are almost valueless, and the value of humanity as a whole is sufficient to allow any number of humans to be murdered to preserve it. Speaking of people being significant individually, this is a bit of a hard one to talk about, listeners. The Protectorate Cape turned Independent Cape in the aftermath of the Brockton Bay Brawl of 2011, turned Warden again in the aftermath of the Gold Morning of 2013. The type of note. Stealth Rock. Stealth Rock has passed away. I'm not one to comment on the passing of strangers, listeners, and strangely enough, Stealth Rock was very much a stranger to me. Damn, that wasn't intended as a pun of any sort, listeners. We'd not really interacted at all. No real conversations of note. I think we crossed swords or paths once or twice. I can't really say what they thought of me, and I can't really know what they would think, honestly. Never had the chance to, and I suppose I never will. To mourn him feels like the usurpation of the grief of those that did know him, but I can remember him, and everyone else he'd ever spoken to can remember him, and people he never even spoke to at all can remember him, I suppose, now. The chance to have known them has passed, but the chance to know of them has not. To know what they've left behind and what people, their lives, the people whose lives that he did. If you want to pay tribute, dear listeners, just draw a happy message on a stone and return it then to wherever you found it. Or hide it. Or find something to do with it. Make a piece of this world forever his. We're ending today with a song, listeners. I've heard a few complaints at how naff I am at singing, but what the hey. This one was supposedly something Rocco liked. Something that he liked. It was by Paramore. The band Paramore. That's Paramore spelt like you're an American trying to spell Paramore. Paramore with Hard Times. Walking around my little rain cloud, hanging over my head, and it ain't coming down. Where do I go? Give me some sort of sign. Hit me with lightning, maybe I'll come alive. Hard times, gonna make you wonder why you even try. Hard times, gonna take you down and laugh when you cry. These lives, and I still don't know how I even survive. Hard times, and I gotta hit rock bottom. All that I want is to wake up fine. Tell me that I'm alright, that I ain't gonna die. All that I want is a hole in the ground. You can tell me when it's alright for me to come out. Hard times, gonna make you wonder why you even try. Hard times, gonna take you down and laugh when you cry. These lives, and I still don't know how I even survive. Hard times, and I gotta get to rock bottom. Thanks for tuning in, listeners. Something of a morbid tone to end today's broadcast on, but something that should be done, really. Good night.